All right. So another edition of Nostr News. Welcome.
Let's go.
So
Excited
today
to go.
we've got a little bit of a different version of Nostr News because my internet has gone out. My mobile tethering is being a little flaky.
Yeah.
And so instead we said, let's just push forward anyway and we'll do a recorded show that we'll publish right away. So this is kind of the no edited version of Nostr News, but unfortunately not live streamed this week. But we'll get back to, we've been off now. I feel like we're lazy. We're not doing live stream this week. We're not doing live stream last week. So
Last week was my fault, so excited to be back though.
next week we'll go live again.
That's right.
But for now we'll record. We'll get this thing out there today, and we'll get it in people's hands. So
Sweet.
yeah,
How have you been the last week? It's been a week since we've caught up.
it's been a week. It's been more than a week. Did we?
Yeah.
because we didn't hang out last week, right?
That's right.
But you weren't traveling. You got back 2 weeks ago.
No, I was traveling last
Oh.
week, a different trip. Last week, so the last time I was traveling was more kind of work related in Costa Rica. Last week, it was my girlfriend's birthday. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
we went to Santa Fe, and
Right.
that was pretty fun. I never
Nice.
I had driven through there, but never spent time in the high desert.
Yep.
It was really lovely. Like the high desert gets dry, so I'd wake up very thirsty every day. It also snowed, so it made me appreciate California again.
Right.
But
Yep.
yeah,
Well,
it was fun.
welcome back home.
Thank you.
And I see you're wearing the official gear of Californians. That's like a standard issue.
I think this is the San Francisco kind of
Patagonia R1, is it?
Yeah, uniform. But I want to show you. It is actually, this is an incredibly comfortable jacket, but I have a little something.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
bit chilly today because the heat is off. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to keep it on, but I want to show you something big unveil. You ready? You ready?
Yep. Ready for it? Oh yeah,
Let's
the
look at
Nostr Rica
The Nostr Rica shirt,
Uvita,
baby.
19th to the 21st of March in
Let's
Costa
go.
Rica,
Let's
Pura
fucking
Vida.
go.
Very nice, beautiful.
Excited about that.
Where who did that? Is that part of Lightning?
Yeah, this is
Store?
still Sam Means from Lightning Store and the founder of Wave Lake. That dude just he's shipping cool stuff
Awesome.
nonstop.
Wow, I love it. Super
So,
cool.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing. So, well, I guess since 2 weeks have gone by or more, maybe, a lot has happened.
Mhm.
And so we got a list of things, but just like what's top of mind for you right now? Like what's been sort of on your mind over these last few weeks? Questions you're asking yourself or things that you've been recently paying attention to or more attention to than before?
Yeah, I mean, so much. Like it truly feels like we're hitting an inflection point for Bitcoin and Lightning, Nostr also, but there's something swelling and I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a little bit reflected in the price starting to come back a little bit as well, which is kind of interesting. Like I
Mhm.
felt this many times in bull runs before, so that's
Right.
kind of interesting. But more important is just the activity. And I would say I'm seeing activity on kind of three different dimensions. One is obviously Nostr, which we're going to talk about the most today.
Yep.
I think the Zaps are top of mind for me, and we'll spend
Yep.
a lot of time talking about that. But that I think has product market fit, which is huge. The amount of sats are just being slinged around there. No one is slinging more than my boy DK right here. Sats on sats. Let's go.
Yeah.
So that's huge. I think number two, the ordinal stuff, which again, I'm not a big NFT guy, but I'm very close with a couple of guys, Casey, the creator of ordinals, and then Danny, who's doing a lot of really cool minting stuff over at DZ.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't argue with the product market fit that they have right now. Like people are, I mean, again, I'm not saying I get it, but like people are inscribing, the degen stuff, which is whatever.
Yeah.
But they're also doing really cool stuff around inscribing documents. Like I think someone did the entire King James Bible on there. So
Uh-huh.
there's some interesting free speech stuff. And honestly, I have gotten a lot of my old school kind of Ethereum or like Solana people that are all coming back to me asking about Bitcoin.
Mhm.
So again, even though it's not my thing, like there's something happening there and it's big.
Right.
And I can say also from some of my portfolio companies that are involved, like their revenues are like, I won't say who, but like exploding because of this. So it's wild.
And is that because the additional kind of information that's being stored on blocks makes the mempool more competitive, makes fees go up? Is that the main driver, or is there something else going on?
Well, I think that's certainly a big part of it. But I think the big driver is just more usage, right? And so if you have never had a Bitcoin wallet before and
Mhm.
you've never had a Lightning wallet before, and you need to download one now to be able to accept, be able to accept a Satoshi that's inscribed with an ordinal or whatever, like
Right.
you're downloading a wallet, you're using sats for the first time, you have to acquire those sats. So it's just increasing the usage.
Right.
And so for some of these companies, like let's say you're converting from fiat to Bitcoin,
Yep.
and the company takes a cut of that, well, that's the revenue. And so I think fees are also part of that. But it's just usage. And I think what's interesting is actually something that I'm getting really excited about is like all of these things are happening at once. And I don't think that's coincidental, right? I think the beauty of Bitcoin and Lightning and now with Nostr is that they all feed into each other.
Yep.
And so there's kind of like interoperable open networks for money, payments, and messaging.
Mhm.
And you get these super network effects. Like once one starts spinning
Right.
and then the other starts spinning and they all start spinning together. So like, we talked about this last week, but like with Danny's thing at DZ in the Astral Babes and all the other stuff he's doing, what's crazy is it uses all three, right? So if let's say I'm a total noob coming into Bitcoin and Nostr for the first time, well, in order to mint with his collection, I have to pay with Lightning. So I have to get a Lightning wallet and Sats there. I then have to, he ships it to a Nostr. He created a NoSoft wallet, which uses a Nostr address, right? And then he's shipping you a Bitcoin UTXO, a Satoshi. So you've gone from 0 to now using Bitcoin, Lightning, and Nostr all at once. And then meanwhile, you've got all these new people that are coming to Nostr. Like, what are these Zaps? Like, oh, what's Wallet of Satoshi?
Right.
And it's just, everything is feeding in on each other. The network effects are swelling. So that's all huge. And then the last thing I'll mention is even the more conventional, kind of companies in my portfolio. And again, I won't get into all the specifics here, but like particularly some of the Lightning payment companies. Oh my God. In the background, I'm seeing some of these guys sign major customers with real revenue. And these are like kind of old school companies. And so it just, I mean, I don't want to like jinx anything. I almost feel like I pinch myself, but it just feels like a perfect storm is forming right now. And it's wild.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. And I kind of feel a lot of the same stuff. I notice it a lot on, while using Nostr, people are always throwing around Lightning payments now.
Yeah.
And so people were saying, oh, like, did you first learn about Lightning through Nostr? And many times people are coming on and they've never experienced Lightning or Bitcoin. And so Nostr is like so low stakes to just show up. And then you get, sort of a gentle on-ramp to what the Lightning experience is. And then I find myself even, I've dabbled with playing with lots of wallets over the years, but never really had a good daily use case. And now I'm like flinging around Sats every day. So
how many payments are you sending a day? Because you're like the new Sats greeter at this point, right? Like
I don't know. There's probably people who do more than me, but I don't know. I probably do dozens a day. I would
dozens?
Guess. I don't know. Maybe something like that.
That's crazy.
Because I made these YouTube videos that kind of tell you how to get like Damus and Wallet of Satoshi connected. And so people, see that, and then I ask them, I think part of the video, I asked them to issue me their first invoice, and so I pay those invoices when people tag me in the videos. Tag me in the notes because they saw the video.
All right, DK is taking over from Jack as the official Walmart Nostr greeter.
Yeah, the Nostr greeter.
And in general, I mean, obviously that's very cool. Has there been anything top of mind for you or surprising in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think the Zap stuff really hitting and starting to play with like new clients that integrate it in different ways, and sort of the implication it has on information quality just keeps just screaming red line in my mind. Like, what are we gonna do with this? And so things like I've been talking about this with everybody I can meet, but where is like the Zapper news? I want to see. Show me a list of all the best notes that have received the most zaps. And I know there's problems with it, and like I get it, but I think there's still opportunity to do that and to do it well and to keep improving it. And I think it's good enough that you could just do it, in a way that may be easily gamed, but maybe easy for us to start to play with.
Yeah.
So I'm really into zaps and the information quality that they can surface. Actually, I think I saw somebody post something. Was it the one that you shared with me?
Yeah, it's zaplife.lol.
Yeah. And I think somebody had shared a screenshot of that I saw on Damus, and I think Will replied to him and said, "Oh, like we're working on this, or this is on the plan right now to show something like that type of view of notes in the Damus client." So that'll be interesting to have effectively a Twitter-like experience coupled with a Reddit-like experience all in one place.
Yeah. And I mean, who knows? I know this is now becoming the zeitgeist. That's like obviously a great first example. A lot of people are thinking about this. I think we've got a little bit later, but I'll skip ahead. Buried in a StackerNews discussion, our mutual homie Keyan came on there and said, perhaps we'll get a StackerNews front end on a Nostr back end. So maybe we'll see it on the original StackerNews as well.
Was that a perhaps? I thought it was a little more conviction.
I think perhaps. It was a little more conviction, but under promise, over deliver. But I'm stoked to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, I love. I mean, I think Keyan is such a great thinker in this space.
No doubt, he's a stud.
So I just love from the moment I first saw StackerNews, I was like, I got to meet the guy who made this.
100%.
And now, whether StackerNews in its current form or an evolution of it, like Keyan is the mind behind that, and that's what's important. And so I love the fact that he's experimenting with this stuff in Nostr, and he just launched Booger,
Booger, yeah.
Booger, okay. Which is a very simple Nostr relay that's kind of, he wanted to sort of understand from basics how to build that up. So he built his own relay and just launched it yesterday, I think.
Oh, yeah. And of course, in traditional Keyan form, and, I think a lot of people know at this point, we're homies with Keyan, both in Nostrs and StackerNews. And that dude is not only an exceptional developer, exceptional instincts, he's just fucking funny too. Of course it's Booger, right? So it's literally, it's at first I didn't get it. And then someone was like, well, he was like, yeah, Nostr autocorrects to Nostril. And then he did a little Photoshop of the logo with like kind of a dripping booger. And you actually made an interesting comment about the logo.
Yeah, it reminded me, if you sort of search the archive, it reminded me of the very first Twitter logo, which was Twitter before it was called Twitter was called TWTTR, right? But you'd call it Twitter. And there was a really early logo that was that kind of like green gooey piping stuff. And so when I saw the Booger logo, I thought of the original Twitter logo. I thought maybe it was an homage to it, but I think it's not. He wasn't even aware of it.
Just coincidental in the zeitgeist. I think I saw in Nostr actually a couple weeks back. Someone was asking Jack, like, hey, on that original logo, like, were you stoned when you made that? And I think he responded that, like, one of the other guys on there was like, I think they were. So who knows with Keyan? No claims either way.
Claims. Austin, Texas.
Austin's chill. That's good.
So we've got an agenda. Let's get to work.
Let's do it.
I think the first thing, we've already dabbled on Zaps a little bit, but
well, even before Zaps, do you want to just take a look at the the stats?
Like, let's do that.
I like that.
So we will pop over here to the stats. So this is Nostr.band is the stats dashboard that we're using. And we're looking here at daily active users where I've taken out the pub keys that, don't have called high quality. I think high quality means bio and profile photo.
Actually, so yes, but Artur actually added on the site a nice little note about what he means by quality now. And basically, so he's using his trust rank idea.
Oh, okay.
And high level, if he just basically puts in the blue column anyone that has any kind of trust rank, and so that could come, I think, from something like a bio, or doing NIP5 or whatever. But he goes into more detail on there. I think it's interesting. But
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like we've got an even better quality signal than just what it used to be. But I'd say generally, numbers are up relative to a month ago. But of course, there's a bit of a fade. Which I've said before, and I say again, I don't think it really matters. What really matters is like, are some people coming every day and using it and loving it and sticking around? And like, there's going to be these spikes whenever you have, you grow so fast. Of course, there's going to be a big fade, but I think it'll hold a set of people who really did find people to connect with and are having a good experience. So I think this is natural. As long as a bunch of us are hanging out there every day, showing up and having a fun time, I think there'll be other exogenous events like this, and each time it'll just pull us a little bit further forward.
And I think to the point that you made before, that's a really good one is, the developers here, right? As long as they're the audience, they'll be able to build tools that solve the problem. And I still think one of the big problems for people is there's interest for sure. There's no doubt.
Yep.
And then, someone comes, and I talked to new users last week who are like, this is awesome. But actually was talking to someone that was like fairly high up at Microsoft that was pretty excited about this. They got on, they loved it, and they're like, but how do I find people?
Right.
And so, he's not a Bitcoin guy. He's a tech guy. He loves the concept. And so I think you're getting a lot of, spike from Jack or Ed Snowden or whoever. But there just, I think, goes to show for all the entrepreneurs and builders out there, there's so much opportunity to build the tools to retain those users.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And I started that Nostr starter pack note that kind of tried to outline a few people. So I was sort of sharing the Nostr idea with a long-term tech friend of mine the other day. We haven't published the video yet, but we made a video. And then he tweeted this morning, hey, this is great, but like, who should I follow? And so I had my Nostr starter pack note to share on Twitter. I'm one of the few remaining who still hang out on Twitter from time to time.
I like that.
But I shared that note, and then I also mentioned Nostr directory as one way to get started. But I do feel like we need more and better tools, despite the centralizing problems that they have, or kind of maybe some ideological risk. I think having more tools that help people get connected is going to be a net positive for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And for getting people retained.
It's a good idea. I'm going to follow up with this guy I'm thinking of, share your note with him. I also really like, in addition to the directory, which is great, Nostr directory, on Nostr Band under his people section, you can see the new kind of trending people. I think that's like a pretty fun way to see, okay, who's hot now or whatever as well.
Yep, totally. Cool. So we've got some of the new user stats. I'm going to filter again the writing events. So writing events, nice bumps there. I don't know if that was there some exogenous factor that occurred.
It could be Zaps.
Could be just Zaps. Yeah, people are kind of re-engaging around that. Total users still creeping up.
But yeah, what are we at now? I think it's like over 600,000 display. Right?
Yeah, 669.
All right, let's go.
Daily events published. I'm going to filter out a bunch of stuff here so that we get a better view of what like I like to look at reactions. So that's looking good. And then total events published. And this was the one you were talking about, right? The
this
daily
one,
zaps.
The next one, is
the next one.
The most beautiful charts I've ever seen.
So total zaps sent.
As a VC, this is like this is VC porn.
This is catnip, right?
Yeah, it is. It literally is.
You're like, what? Where is that going next?
Exactly. Unclear.
Anybody's guess. So for those of us who are listening to potentially an audio, you should flip over to the video or look at this. It's basically just a beautiful kind of exponential curve of zaps that have been sent.
Total zaps sent. Yeah.
Total zap sent.
It's nice.
Cool. And then, what's happening in Relay World? So there's, it looks like Damus is still maybe the top relay. This is users per relay for the top 30.
Mm-hmm.
So Damus has about 65,000 users. Then next up is Eden, Snort.social is next. I guess it doesn't render these in betweens, which is another large client. Eden is the big paid relay that seems to be the largest. Orangepill.dev. So it seems like in nos.lol, I don't know that I've seen this one before. So is there a lot of movement and activity among the top relays?
I haven't tracked super closely. I think I'm on all of those top ones. Maybe not the Nostr.dev I need to check, but nos.lol, I think. I don't know who's behind that. I think a lot of people just choose it because it's a funny name. Probably. That's why I did. I haven't seen a ton of big movement other than current, which you pointed out to me. So maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Current is interesting. So I think it's a little bit of like this. I don't know if you want to call it, a user-centric compromise of some of the ideals, but in service of the user, the UX to make it really good and easy. So, I think we look at something like Damus, which we love to use. I use Damus every day. It's my favorite client. But I'm like willing to struggle through, what does it mean to have all these npub management and how do I find somebody and, how do I install an Alby extension to be able to go to nostr.directory and find, it's a little bit of a process. And then I also use it with Wallet of Satoshi. So if you want to do Zaps, you have to have yet another app. And I think what Current is intending to do is to try to sort of compromise on any ideals necessary to make the user experience really good.
Right.
And I'm a fan of like more experimentation, especially experimentation that biases toward simplifying user experiences. So despite, obvious, centralization, risks that occur with such things, I think it's great to see people experimenting with those. I also noticed when I actually signed up for the test flight and logged in, and when you go through, I think you give your Twitter handle and it just finds all the people you need and you follow them really easily. So it's kind of that Nostr.directory idea, but just contained within the app, which makes it a lot easier. So having easier people discovery, having like a built-in wallet so that you don't have the awkward like switching apps and stuff, I think it just makes the whole Nostr experience more accessible to more people, and then they could stay with it. They could graduate to other things. If you need more self-sovereignty, you can make those choices too. So I'm really happy to see a lot of that experimentation. Have you played with the core user feed?
No, so I did download the app and just with like a dummy key just to play with it. But what is the core?
It's like a radically different UI for consuming them. So I might call it almost like instead of the notes feeling like Twitter, it feels a little more, I don't know, TikTok-like. Because a lot of times a note will have some media attached, whether it's a link that has a meta tag that can be rendered as part of the note, or it is itself an image or a GIF. And so so it sort of takes that idea and makes it, one at a time, and you swipe through and swipe to the next, and all of your controls are on the right-hand side while your content media is kind of in a kind of a rectangular surface area on the, the core kind of left aligned side of the feed. So I think it's nice that there's like another radically different experimentation around how a feed of notes could be consumed or should be consumed.
Yeah.
And it just points to the more experimentation that happens, the better, because then the positive, there's like some selection trait that gets then figured out that everybody likes, and then it gets, probably quickly copied and distributed to everybody who would value that. So
totally. Yeah. I mean, my big takeaway there, I agree with you. Like, I think it's important I think when you were talking about the centralized thing with current, it's probably mostly on the wallet, which, some people obviously are very hardcore about custody your own stuff.
And people discovery.
And people discovery too. That's true.
Another one that.
Yeah. But I think, I'm with you. I think more experimentation is better. The one thing I will say is that, Damus is obviously my daily driver as well. My one frustration there is that I have to use it on my phone because I still have the old Intel. One day I'll get the new Mac. But in the meantime, if you're using, let's say you have your keys in Alby and you're using, snort.social or Iris or whatever, Astral Ninja for your web client, zapping is so easy because you can just like set, okay, anything under like 100 sats, don't even ask me. Just like I click and I zap 10 sats or 100 sats or 1,000 sats, whatever. And it's just so easy. And you can just zap. Like I could zap, probably 1,000 times because I'm just like zap, whatever. I will say in Damus right now, the zapping experience is frustrating because I have, to open up another wallet, and maybe it's Breeze or Moon or Cash App. I've been playing with Cash App just to see that experience. And it's just a pain in the ass. And so what I really hope happens is, I like, salud. I like that, projects like Current have the wallet built in. That's obviously a much better zapping experience on mobile. What I hope ends up happening, those will also get options, through APIs like Alby's or Breezes, where you could have a non-custodial wallet directly implemented into something like Damus. And personally, that would be my like ideal experience.
Yes, I need to get my head around exactly how those moving parts would work. So I think my understanding is Damus would never touch the wallet. They would never touch the value store, right?
Right.
And so if you were using Breeze, you'd use a Breeze Lightning address configured in your profile?
Yeah. So the way it would work, I mean, I think this is still somewhat theoretical, although Breeze did ship their new SDK. I haven't actually seen someone build on it yet. And I think Alby is intending to move in this direction as well. But the idea would be that you would have a full Lightning node running on your phone. Today, the way that Breeze does it, and again, I'm not in all of the specific technicals here, is, originally they were using LND, which is the dominant sort of Lightning implementation. Now they use C Lightning because they are able to break out the signing keys from the rest of the nodes. So like you have some of the node running in the cloud, then you actually have your signing keys on the phone. And so you would have an experience where, I guess presumably I'm thinking more about the push zap rather than the receive zap. I guess, you would also have a Lightning address that's probably associated with your node. But more importantly, when you want to send, you would basically have the keys locally on your phone, and I'm assuming you could make a setting where it's like, if it's under a certain amount, just let me zap like under 100 sats without asking me. Okay.
But I guess I'm imagining we're talking iPhone, right? And so you can't have, every app is sandbox, right? So wouldn't it have to launch another app in order to pull it, or is there some way to?
Well, my understanding is with this SDK, you would have like Damus would have or whatever client would have a built-in Lightning node in their app, but that node is being run by Breeze on behalf of the user using their API.
I see.
So it would be like the Current experience, but you have the keys on your phone.
Right. And you're signing from that wallet that may touch Breeze, and then Breeze is authorizing it through like a relationship they have directly with Damus?
Well, yeah. So exactly. So let's just say Damus wanted to build a wallet into their app, and they use the Breeze SDK. Then you would have the keys stored locally on your hardware, on your Mac or on your iOS device. And then you would probably have some setting where it's like anything under 1,000 sats, don't even ask me, just sign automatically. And so I don't know exactly how that would work, but I'm assuming it's like in the secure element. So, but it's all within Damus. But
Oh, okay.
Damus behind the scenes is calling the Breeze
Got it.
API.
Yeah. So then you can kind of have the just tap and pay.
Exactly.
You don't have to switch apps. You don't have to.
That's the experience I want to see on mobile is just tap and pay. And I think Current's doing a great job to facilitate that custodially.
Yeah.
I'm just excited with Breeze or Alby and their APIs that could be integrated in other wallets non-custodial.
Yep. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah,
wait.
it's exciting.
and have you followed all? I know there's some discussion around the compromises that LNURL has versus Bolt 12. Do you have a good handle on kind of what the state of that is, and are we going to get to?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I'm definitely not the right person on this one. I mean, I have like a basic understanding, obviously, of what Bolt 12 is. I mean, for high level for people that are listening, Bolt 12 would be like the next big kind of upgrade to the Lightning Network, and I forget what it's called, but it's like in the same way you have NIPS or BIPs for Bitcoin improvement proposals. This would be the next big kind of update.
Yeah.
And a lot of the implementations are already experimenting with it. I think everyone, including LND, is now also like at least testing with it, but it's just a matter of prioritization. High level, the big thing you get from Bolt 12 is the ability to have like static addresses where you could like receive multiple payments to one address. I'm not as deep in the technical details. I don't really have a super strong opinion on it. It sounds like generally a good idea, but again, everything comes down to prioritization. I'm not as bearish as some people on LNURL. In fact, generally I'm a pretty big fan. I think it works pretty well. The beef with LNURL is that you basically have to have your Lightning node running on a separate server. And every time you want to generate an invoice, like if you're like the way the Lightning Network works is today, if you want to receive a payment and you're doing this all non-custodially, you need to be online to receive that payment from someone else. And so the way this works is you basically have a web server running the node for you. And basically, if every time someone makes a call to send you a payment, that web server generates a QR code for them to pay. And but you then have to trust whoever's running that web server for you. And you could run it yourself, but most people are never going to do that. Right. And so you end up having trust in that other person. I mean, look, I get all the arguments, like non-custodial as possible is always better. I personally think that LNURLs and Lightning addresses in general are like pretty good. And I like the user experience a lot. So I wouldn't say I'm like anti either. Like I would love to see Bolt 12 as well.
Got it. Yeah. And I just learned, not for another rabbit hole distraction, but I just learned a little more about Fedimint the other day.
Oh, Fedimint's dope.
Would something like that ecosystem of servers and kind of live connections that you don't have in a mobile phone at all times, but maybe you would have in another system, would like something in the Fedimint ecosystem be able to serve that purpose?
What purpose?
Meaning to enable, my understanding is a lot of the LNURL stuff has kind of this offline nature, problem to it. And so I think you were proposing that there's like maybe you run your own node that becomes the signer for you. And is there something in the way kind of the Fedimint structure is sort of designed to let other people?
Yeah, I mean, look, so high level, I mean, I love Fedimint. I'm an investor in Fedi, which is the company. Fedimint itself. So for those of you who don't know, Fedimint is an open source project. Fedi is like the company that's kind of bringing it to market right now, although anyone could build on top of it. Fedimint, basically, you can think of them as like almost like a Bitcoin bank. So you have a group of trusted signers and you can choose who those signers are. And they basically are a bank, they're a mint, right? That takes in for a community Satoshis, and they're interoperable with Lightning Network, which is the key that I think some people have missed before. It's based on this idea of chiming eCash. You can read the whole cypherpunk history there. But basically, because it's Lightning native, you can put Satoshis, you can put Bitcoin into a treasury or into a bank, right?
Yep.
And then they issue tokens, which are 1-for-1 swappable for Satoshis. And because it's all interoperable in Lightning, you can basically send a Lightning payment to the bank or from the bank, and it's completely interoperable with Lightning. Now, there's good and bad. The bad, of course, is there's some trust. And so that means that whoever, let's say it's, 7 signatories, if 4 of them go rogue, they can just run away with all the coins for whoever they're custodying for. The good is that you can choose who those people are. And so the idea is that if it's, let's say, a community that's doing this with, 10,000 people, and they choose the 7 whatever leaders or elders or whatever, and those people fuck them over, well, there's recourse because they all live together in the same town.
Right.
And unlike with, a faceless Wells Fargo or something. It's a very cool project. And because of that, because they have the control of this server, which is basically managing the money and the payments for you, yeah, they could do a lot of other things as well, like potentially run, other kinds of servers for their community or other kinds of apps that are self-sovereign, but for the community. And I think that's cool. I just think, again, it's a different trust model.
Got it.
So
Yep.
pros and cons.
Okay, so I'm like taking us way off.
Yeah,
way
completely
script here.
off track. But I
So
mean,
we're
it's
talking
fascinating
Zaps.
topics. Yeah.
We're talking Zaps and how to get them into apps and different app models and custodial models. So you want to pop back up? Is there more on the stats you want to look at?
No. I think the parabolic curve is awesome.
It's pretty cool. So I think, let's see, you said Wallet of Satoshi is seeing similar growth?
Well, yeah,
right?
maybe we can start with so there's NIT57, which makes wallets compatible with Zaps. And so remember that the concept of a Zap is that you're not just receiving a tip, but also you basically tell when a tip was sent and by who. And that's at the protocol level. And that's very important because now you have three critical pieces of data: who sent the Zap, verify that the Zap was actually sent, and then the amount of the Zap. And so with that, we've talked about some of the interesting things you can do around trust rank and like all kinds of cool stuff you can do around search and discovery. But that's like the NIT57 thing. And so, in the last couple of days, a lot of wallets have started to realize this is going to be huge. So yeah, we got the list here. We've got now Wallet of Satoshi, which seems to be the most popular Lightning wallet in the world. You've got a whole bunch of new ones. Bitcoin Jungle, which is interesting because that's Galoy's wallet. Galoy is the company behind Bitcoin Jungle, Bitcoin Beach wallet. And, it's funny. I was actually talking to Nicholas. He was one of the guys that first Lightning pilled me back in 2020, like hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
I was already into Lightning, but he really showed me the potential here. And then, so he kind of got to return the favor after he read my Nostr article. He started getting into this, and they immediately shipped NIT57 compatibility, which is awesome because in Costa Rica, a lot of the people use the Bitcoin Jungle wallet.
I see.
So now they can start receiving Zaps.
Yep.
You've got, obviously Wallet of Satoshi, which is the biggest one. StackerNews, Keyan obviously ships very fast. So a whole bunch of these wallets are making it easier for people to receive Zaps.
And did you want to? Was that the next one we're going to flip to?
Yeah, sure.
So this is Wallet of Satoshi, more love from Wallet of Satoshi.
Yeah.
There's something in the replies here we're going to look at.
No. Maybe if you click on the link.
Oh, this link. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
It just shows some more usage porn.
Uh-oh. I'm having some internet problems.
Well, high level, basically number of payments go up a lot.
Yep.
So that's exciting.
All right. We're going to assume that the internet is still down. We can't live stream, but
No worries.
we've got a few cached pages. So if you want, we can visit any of those.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can also show the next one, LN Tipbots. This is really cool. This is an open source project from Kali, who is a prolific Lightning developer, works at LN Bits as well. And disregard, I think, the later weeks of the year. I think that's from last year. But if you look at the first 9 on the left-hand column, yeah.
So right here.
Yeah, you can basically see for last week, this is the number of users. They've also gone, they've grown a lot. And we think that's almost entirely because of Zaps.
Yep.
And so LN Tipbot is cool because it's like a Telegram bot where you can send and receive payments from Telegram, including to users that don't even have a wallet yet. So it's a great way to onboard newbies. But since he integrated Zap support and kind of publicized the community how to use it, they're growing a lot.
Yep.
So, I mean, the general point with all of these graphs is that Zaps have product market fit. People fucking love sending Zaps. They love receiving Zaps.
Yep.
And it's just, it's cool.
That's great. Do we have other ones here? Oh, this was my, has anyone made a trending chart? I guess you snuck that one in.
I did.
Thank you. I'm actually excited for this. So I guess that exists now, right?
Yeah.
And here's the answer to it.
Maybe you want to talk about why you asked that and what you see here.
Yeah. So I just thought we have right now all these Zaps flying around, and I send tons of Zaps and it's super fun. But I was actually kind of just flipping through the feed, and I was like, well, everything at the top of the feed basically has roughly zero sats in Zaps because it was just published. And so what I really want to do is see what happened, an hour ago, 2 hours ago, 24 hours ago, that, are the ones that are getting a lot of Zaps and a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really digging and trying to find them. I was like, it's just an information problem. Software can solve this kind of thing really well. So I was proposing, we should have something like a Zapper News, which is, a Hacker News, StackerNews style, subreddit style thing that lets us see the most zapped posts. Maybe there's some other filtering criteria, maybe only from people I follow or people who are one hop away from people I follow. There's lots of lots of space to explore there.
Right.
But I want to just see, like, show me a list of all the high quality information from the last 24 hours. Like, that's a great news source.
And we would use that as we prepare for weekly Nostr News.
Absolutely.
In fact, we could probably just run our show just off of that.
we'll just read the Zapper news, and that'll be everything we need. Oh, I'm taking a risk here and clicking around.
Ooh.
Hopefully the internet doesn't. I think it's maybe cached. So this is Nakadai 2 hours ago. Is that 76,000?
Yeah, that's a lot of sats.
Sats, yeah.
From only 14 zaps. So someone sent him or her a big note.
But this says somebody sent 220,000 sats. So maybe this is a follow-up post?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, wow. And then Odell with 10,000, 3, almost 4,000. Another one, total with 3,500, 3,000, total not. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of view that I want now. Of course, I really want to see, now that we've got like the basics. Oh, sorry, I didn't have that up. This is what we were showing just a moment ago. But now that we've got the basics out, I think it'd be great to be able to do like filtering by people I'm following and give me other, control of how I, view content in this interface.
And if you go back to the top, I don't know if this will work. We're going to take a risk as well. But at the top of the page, top Nostriches. This is interesting because you can also see like who are the top zappers and who's the top zaps. You can see basically who's being very potentially generous or whatever.
Nice, yeah.
Which I think is kind of an interesting.
These are the people who received, or
these are people who sent. Yeah.
Oh,
so you can
nice.
see. It turns out the people that zap a lot get zapped back.
Yep.
And those who give receive.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very cool. So this would be also a great way to. I mean, obviously things can be gamed, but over time, I think there's credible solutions that could emerge to help this become a really good kind of discovery point of like, who should I be following? We'll follow the people who are very engaged and helping nurture the network and making it better.
Exactly.
So this is a really exciting.
I mean,
Zaps just unlock a lot. So it's unsurprising that we can't stop talking about them.
Well, and so that does bring up the last thing that I wanted to show here, which is a discussion on StackerNews. And I don't have an answer here, but it was an interesting question, which is kind of saying, okay, cool, zaps are cool. I think everyone agrees it's fun, it's interesting, it's certainly getting traction. But what's like the second and third order, consequence of this? Is it good? Is it bad? You and I have talked a lot about information quality. It's certainly a lot higher. I know there's some concerns about wash zapping, creating like other accounts do zapping, which is a real concern.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they just posed the question here. Do zaps incentivize groupthink or useful discourse? And there's some interesting ideas in there, but I just wanted to pose that question to you live. What do you think?
I mean, I'm an optimist on this kind of stuff because I think it doesn't have a structural impossibility to achieve it. We don't know exactly how it will be achieved.
Yeah.
But it's not structurally impossible.
Right.
Right. And so, I think what happens typically, very common in technology is you build something that's small and useful enough in its small state. And then everybody says, oh, that doesn't work. It doesn't solve thing X and Y and Z. And there's like a million problems with it. And like, that's actually what good looks like.
Right.
And I prefer that versus like, hey, we were in the ivory tower for the last decade, but we've got everything solved. I'm like, no way. There's no way to solve all the problems a priori. You need to sort of have something that's small and useful, and then you can sort of build upon how people are using it. Because it's really the interplay of usage and technology that helps us discover what to build next.
100%. And I would even go so far as to say, one of my big obsessions, an area that I wish I had even more time to read deeply on, is just evolution, right?
Oh, yeah.
So outside of just technology, I mean, technology is one place where evolution happens, but evolution happens everywhere, right?
Yep.
And I think that you could argue that the universe, cosmically is just evolution. It's just the universe playing with itself and evolving. And I think that the same thing happens in technology. And I think one of the things that I love about the Bitcoin Lightning community and about Bitcoin Lightning in general is it's simple and it builds on itself. But what's that law you mentioned where like every complex system is made of simple systems? Galt's law, maybe?
Galt's law, yeah.
Yeah, anyways, I really subscribe to that. And this is always one of the big issues I have with other crypto ecosystems like Ethereum and stuff, is it's just so much trying to do top-down planning and see for every eventuality. And I think no one's that smart, no one. And so the only way to solve these kind of problems is to say, okay, there's a kernel of something here that's clearly working.
Yep.
Play it out.
Yep. I love the evolutionary perspective. That's a lot of how I think about these things too, because, if you sort of think about what is, the universe is mostly a bunch of energy, and we as humans are just sort of part of an evolution of sort of gathering and redistributing energy in various ways.
100%.
And our choice to build technologies is also just like an extension of that. So everything kind of just is the next logical step in a way.
Yep.
But one of the things that is interesting about, which I think is actually somewhat telling, the way that biological, the way that like a biological mutation is successful is usually like a very, is useful in the smallest scale when it's like very little bit of a useful mutation, and then it kind of extends along those paths.
Right.
And in kind of human design, we often design things that don't work in a small scale. I mean, still compliant with what I'd say compliant with Gall's law, but like an eye is a useful sensor, even if it doesn't have all the detail of the world, and it can just tell light or not light.
Right.
That helps a prehistoric fish avoid getting eaten. So that's useful. And then all the features we have, I can look across the table. I can look at the monitor. People across the world can watch us talking. Those are just like very extended versions of that, but you couldn't design that up front.
Right.
And then there's things like a wheel and an axle. That does not occur naturally in nature because like a small version of that is not like that useful. There's not like a simple version that besides having the full wheel and the full axle, which is itself kind of simple, but there's not like an easy evolutionary path to get there. So a lot of times I like to think about new technologies and like, do we have a simple enough version that it could either randomly emerge, it's fine, like biology, but I think it's fine if there's people who design it because like that's what we do. We sort of remix ideas in ways that don't naturally just occur from mutations. But are they simple enough that then we can build upon them? And they're useful enough in like their simple nature that they can then be kind of further built.
100% agree. We should do a whole jam one day just on evolution. But but I agree with you. And I think that that's one of the things I love about, we talked earlier about the Bitcoin being the money network, Lightning Payments Network, Nostr Messaging Network. All of them are valuable, right, in and of themselves. And they don't technically have to use one another. They're all standalone, very important breakthroughs and useful in their own rights. But when you combine them together, now all of a sudden you get the beauty of complexity, which is you get an emergent phenomenon, which is much more powerful than any of the constituent parts. And that's where stuff starts to get exciting. So
yeah, it's also interesting the sequence. It's sort of, I would call it somewhat haphazard that somebody invented a neutral internet money before somebody invented Nostr. I think those are probably maybe in the course of time we'll find that they're equivalently important discoveries or inventions.
Yeah.
But it could have been that we had something like Nostr before we had a global internet money. But I think it would be hard for something like Nostr to scale unless there were a neutral internet money. So in a sense, neutral internet money's been around for a while now. It's 14 years.
Yeah.
And it has had some challenges in getting into people's hands and finding its use cases, I think because money is so serious.
Yeah, I agree.
And one of the things I love about Nostr is that it's like you can just show up and play and it doesn't have to be super serious. And it makes it easy to onboard to like what is a good decentralized technology, even if it's not money. But then maybe you learn about the money or you find use cases that you would value later. So I think Nostr is just like this, rocket ship turbocharging the ability for anybody to show up and use this with very low stakes. And then you can like increase stakes over time as you want.
Totally. Are you, have you read any Kevin Kelly books?
Oh yeah.
I'm a huge Kevin Kelly fan.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the.
I'll have to show you my selfie with Kevin Kelly.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I would love getting him on the show. Would be a dream. Just FYI. Like that dude. I mean, he's rated highly and still super underrated in my mind.
Yeah.
Some of his books, like Out of Control, that's like a big like part of like the whole push for my fund, forming a global hive mind.
Yep.
But anyways, one of his books, What Technology Wants, something that really stuck with me is there is this kind of certain inevitability to the way that evolution flows. Like when you look at the way, and I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit. It's been a couple of years since I read it, but if you look what happens in evolution, it's not like, this is a kind of a controversial claim, but I don't think it's random, like any mutation or anything. Like there's not like an infinite number of different mutations that happen. There are certain forms, right, that reemerge over and over again in nature.
Yeah.
Or certain, I forget like the specific compound that's used for eyes to be able to receive light. That also developed in like other, like completely independently in other organisms. And so I think there are for whatever reason, our universe seems to suggest there are certain shapes or forms that are more likely to occur. And that's not to say that everything is predetermined necessarily, but like certain contours and shapes are much more likely than others. And so his argument is kind of that really stuck with me is that something like a global information network was, very likely to occur in the global arc of universal history, which is to say that the internet itself didn't have to be exactly like the specific coloring of that, or the specific, is it going to be super decentralized or a little less? Those things are kind of up for grabs. But like the idea of, okay, we connect 8 billion humans,
right?
That's going to happen. And I feel like something like the same thing with Bitcoin, like the idea of a sound energy backed money, like is just inevitable. Now, was it exactly Bitcoin? Was it going to be exactly Satoshi? And, a lot of these, it's very interesting. A lot of these big breakthroughs, intellectual breakthroughs, they all happen around the same time, right? And they're often independent. Calculus got, discovered independently by many different people, all of the and it's because, again, going back to Gall's law, once you have certain constituent parts, it's just a matter of time until someone sees that those parts are mashed up. But if you don't have those constituent parts, then you're missing that ingredient to get to the next piece. And I think that's kind of what's happening here as well.
Yeah, exactly why as a venture capitalist, you probably ask, why now, right?
There
has to be some confluence of events that make it finally possible.
Exactly. Like a lot of these ideas, like, and this is what's interesting is like, if you look back in like the 2014 kind of vintage of companies that were getting funded, I think BitPay was around that time, or 2013. Like everyone was, Bitcoin, like global internet money. Let's go. Let's get a payment company. The problem was you didn't have Lightning Network yet. And so it was too early. And so when I, started going really deep in the rabbit hole and I first discovered Lightning like late 2017, early 2018, I was like, okay, this thing's going to take a little while to mature, but this is the missing technology that makes Bitcoin go from being kind of like a hobbyist, collectible, potentially store of value to a currency. But you couldn't have done it without something like Lightning on top.
Right. And then I think Nostr turbocharges the use case for why do we need a currency that we can pay? Like, who are we paying this currency to? Well, we're paying it to a bunch of unaffiliated parties of people running relays and clients and users wanting to interact that way. Like, in a sense, it's the number one use case. I'm pretty convinced that this style of interaction of unaffiliated people exchanging real value and server costs from the perspective of relays are just like, various tips and contributions of Zaps from users to users. I think this is the use case. Like,
I agree. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm totally sold. Nostr would takes Bitcoin Lightning mainstream.
Yep.
As you know, like my next, fund is basically Nostr fund.
So. Yeah. Let's go. All right. So we've got, what do we have coming up now? We have verified human, right? So
you should talk
can we talk a little bit about this? Yeah. So this project came up this week. I saw this was really exciting to me because we've talked a lot, both on the show as well as just with each other offline about how kind of the relationships between people in the network are the thing that defines the signal. And that's for search or for people discovery, for all kinds of use cases. And so how do we actually establish those relationships, and how do we figure out like what's a bot, what's a human, which are the humans whose perspective or opinion I value? How do I decide who to follow? So this project called Verified Human showed up.
It's a good name.
Yeah. And, I think the initial ambition is fairly limited, which is just, is this a human or a bot, right? And so the main mechanism, as I understand it, and it's kind of the earliest incarnation of it, is just people coming up and verifying each other, saying like, I believe that the person with the NPub that Max has is the real Max because I've met him in real life. And so I think it's more just a binary yes or no. But I was writing notes to the developer of Verified Human, and we were talking. Actually, I want to shout him out. If you happen to, the internet connection is not probably good enough to help me figure that out. So apologies, I don't have the shout out. But
I think it's like Paper something was his website.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah. Oh, actually, I think we have the website up.
Let's see.
Probably not.
It was a nice website. But yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we go here. Is it going to load? You know what I can do is I'm going to connect my phone and hotspot it.
Let's go. Doing it live, guys. Doing it live.
No, you know what? That's not going to happen.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I think Verified Human is initially, the 1 or the 0, yes or no. But he also has the idea of costliness.
Mhm.
And this is an area that we were debating a little bit on Nostr, is could I actually stake some Bitcoin or make a payment to you saying, this is how much I believe that Max is real, is I'm going to send him 5,000 sats and I'm going to put my name behind that.
Right.
So I think once you start adding the weight to the edges of that graph, stuff gets really interesting. And of course, like, digital scarce sats provide a really nice way to have weight and have the avoidance of problems. Now there are problems that exist, and I think people are raising problems like you have, I think they were calling it like wash zapping.
Yeah, I like that name.
Which I think is kind of to say like I could send you 10,000, or I could send you 100 million sats, and you could send me 100 million sats back, and then we each have those referenced, but the net is basically zero value is transacted. And Artur came in and actually was repping that this is just kind of the way the internet works, and we just need to build better systems that have an understanding of the underlying graph, that what is the net state of the graph, not what is a specific transaction, which I think is the right way to look at it, is like understand the global state of which humans verify other humans, and which humans, I'm using the term stake, I don't know if there's a better way to say it, but which humans like endorse with a value that the other human is human. And maybe even I could say, look, Max is an expert on Mexico City, right? Maybe I could actually start to add those kinds of
I love that.
tags and stake that I know something about you, and this is how much I know about, or this is how much I'll endorse you on that topic.
I love that, because then all of a sudden in our constant running conversation around discovery and search, that gets really interesting. It's like, well, if I know DK is an expert in this, like let's say you say I'm an expert in Mexico City, you're willing to put your sats where your mouth are. And then, I make a recommendation around a great restaurant to go to in Mexico City, that should be rated more highly, right?
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera. The one thing that I tend to very much agree, and I think Artur's right. It's not about, the individual zaps, but rather the net weight. I think that's correct. Like zaps received and zaps sent. The worst issue of zap trading or wash zapping that I can come up with, and I still don't think it's a huge problem, because again, sats are scarce, so you can only like game it to a certain point. But is like, if someone's really trying to do that, they're not going to do it from like their main account, right? Like you just basically would do like, okay, DK, I know you've got a great following now on Nostr. I really want you to zap me. Maybe you're going to zap 100K sats saying I'm legit. And then offline from a new private account or a new private wallet, I'll zap you 1 million sats.
Right.
And so how do you think about like preventing some of that?
I mean, these are problems that occur in worse form in the non-digitally scarce internet. So like a Reddit voting ring or a HackerNews voting ring. It happens all the time. There are solutions. I think they mostly work in those places. I think Google search itself is, has the problem. Early days, you have the problem that like people just stuff a bunch of keywords into a website. Does that mean that they deserve to be ranked for that website? The answer is no.
Right.
Part of the magic of Google is that it actually is able to interpret the full graph of the web,
right,
to figure out which websites actually know something about something, and have, there's a sort of some domain authority on different topics that get established through the mechanism of kind of crawling and computation and indexing. So I think it's solvable. I don't think we have the solution, but I think it's not an uncontained problem. But I think people who are negative on it, I think are negative kind of for the wrong reason. Like it may fail for lots of reasons, but I think it's not just like, oh, that simple back and forth can't be solved. I think it can be solved, but you have to say zoom out and look at the entire graph,
right,
and maybe come up with new algorithms for interpretation. Maybe there's new signals in, I don't even know all the signals that can be read from Lightning transactions or Zaps on Nostr. Like there's tons of new signals. I don't know which is the right one, but what I do know is that you take a lot of smart people who can all experiment on it in an open system. And if it can be done, I think we as humanity will find the answer. I don't think I'm going to invent the answer. I think humanity, some smart developer is going to figure it out.
I 100% agree with that. And I think putting on my investor hat again, like these are the kinds of projects I want to fund as well. People are trying to solve that, right? So if you're listening and you have a great solution, hit us up. One thing you wanted to mention there, I agree with you. I think that any criticism people can levy against wash zapping of any form is strictly worse in a non-scarce value internet native world. So I think that's true. How is a site like HackerNews solve this? Because I feel like they've done a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that, kind of those voting rings are challenging, both on Reddit and on, you said on Hacker News, right?
Yeah.
And on Hacker News. And I think it's one of these things where you sort of have to be, at least so far, they've had to say, we're going to build a proprietary algorithm that does things like you can, I don't know if they cookie users, but you can see when people visit, you can see how long they dwell, you can see if they actually click on the thing and read it, you can see if they came in from a shared link.
Got it.
Or if they visited directly. You can look at IP addresses. There's lots of things that they do with the data set that they assemble based on how that works.
Got it.
And I think they do a pretty good job. Not perfect, but it's like an important problem. But they keep it closed source on purpose because if you open source the algorithm, everybody knows then how to find the edges of what's supported. So I think, similarly in kind of the Nostr world, we have relays, we have all kinds of new data flowing about Zaps and what Zaps get stored if NIP57, which relays have which information and what can be crawled or understood from the Lightning Network, all kinds of new signals. I don't know which is exactly the right ones or which are going to be the most telling, but I think we can probably start to begin to build systems that observe that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's like an unsolvable problem. Though I do wonder, like, if we, like, it feels like we may need to be similarly cautious of having, I mean, it's one of the areas where it feels like having an open source algorithm for the computation of that seems like it's gameable. So
that could be one area for a company then.
It may be that, that gives it a reason to be a centralized company. It also could be that we need like a platform of pluggable.
Exactly. This is probably the answer.
Transparent, pluggable algorithms that interpret this in different ways. And you can kind of roll your own, or you can run your own, or like maybe there's a community one that a community you trust and the leader that you trust who runs one on your behalf that is a little bit, the cat and mouse game. It's
exactly
one step
constantly
ahead.
Changing it. Exactly. And it's like every week or every month, you have to, it's just the infinite cat and mouse game. It never gets solved.
Yeah. And
which is fine.
Like, Reddit is not perfect. Hacker News is not perfect. Google is not perfect. Where else this occurs? Like antivirus software is not perfect. So there's like every time these cat and mouse games emerge, people are, human ingenuity goes to solve it and it doesn't solve it perfectly. And there's other problems that occur as side effects, unintended consequences. But like, it's not impossible to make progress towards a better future.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me optimism for it.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%.
Cool. So that's verified human. Let's see. What else we got here? Oh, bounties. You were talking about how bounties are gaining traction now?
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention, on bounster.org, which I think is MVK's site for bounties, and also on StackerNews, which is interesting. I noticed Fiat Jaff posting a lot of bounties on StackerNews as well. But the point is, like, the number of bounties is just increasing pretty rapidly. Like, I think, I checked this week. I hadn't checked in about a week and a half, and it looked to me about double the number of bounties from the last time I checked. So a lot more interesting projects. The second bounty got claimed, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it was a long form Nostr piece.
Yep.
So that was very cool to see. Jack's bounty is still sitting there, the big one for decentralized or Nostr based GitHub.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. But anyway, in general, I just wanted to point out that it appears that this bounty model is going to be, I think, one of the really big kind of fundamental shifts that come out of a Nostr plus Lightning world.
Yep.
Don't know exactly what it's all going to produce, but I'm starting to see more, even of my companies, talk about having individual software projects be bounties. And Keyan, I think, did that for like displaying, images or links in line at StackerNews. Instead of coding it himself, he just posted a bounty and it got done. So it's just crazy to see the bounties like work now.
Yep. It's super cool. And I think it is my understanding, right, that so there's at least two spots that I know where they live. So there's the NVK one is, what's it called? Bounties?
Bounster.org.
Bounster.org.
I think.
Yep. Bouncer. BOUNTSR.org.
Oh.
And then StackerNews has its own bounty system. Are they relatively similar, or like do they have different feature sets and how they approach bounties?
Well, so not an expert, but Bounster, I think it's just a simple website that, you can list a bounty on there.
But like, could I endorse a bounty? Like if you put up, I don't know, 10,000 sats to get something done, can I endorse it with 2,000 of my own? Or
I actually don't know that. If you can't, that seems like an incredible feature.
Yeah.
And Keyan, if you're listening, that'd be awesome to have on Stackers. StackerNews is just a specific post type where it has like a nice little like money bag icon.
Yeah.
And you can like list the number of sats. I also would love to see as the next iteration on either of these sites. Well, two interesting things. One, on Bounster, one of the bounties is for a Nostr-based bounty site.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yep.
The other thing I'd love to see is some form of like escrow in the future as well. I think you could use something. Super Testnet came up with this lightning escrow thing, and he was working with someone else in Austin, Scott Tristan, on it. I think that'd be really cool to see a Lightning-based escrow system.
Is the escrow related to Bounties, or just you're saying that should be another project that?
Well, I think it's a project that would link in very nicely with Bounties. So like you as the issuer of the bounty could basically say if it's 100,000 sats, here's the 100,000 sat bounty that's held in escrow. And there's a way to do that kind of decentralized that Supertest's not figured out. And I think that'd be like a cool next feature.
And then presumably the way these have to work is there has to be some adjudication process. Like, did you get the thing or not? Or did you get 80% of the thing? And did you get 150% of the thing? And how does that, there's like, it feels to me like bounties are great, but then they also still involve human judgment. So
they definitely do it. You're never going to get rid of that judgment entirely. But what's interesting there is you can basically, there's a lot of questions to solve. But in this case, you're basically saying instead of me as maybe I don't have a lot of reputation yet, maybe just reputation alone is enough to solve it. Like if it's Fiat Jaff, I've seen he's paid out lots of other sats.
Yeah.
Like probably going to trust him. But if it's someone new, this bounty service or this escrow service could be nice because then the escrow has to make the judgment, but they're a paid service, right? And so their reputation is on the line. They take a 1% cut or whatever for being that adjudicator. And if they start doing a crappy job, then they're out of business.
I see. So is that escrow service though, it sounded like there was a decentralized, like a hypothesis around how to do that in a decentralized way. So do you think it reverts to a centralized provider?
I should be more specific in that. Decentralized in the sense that they don't actually hold the sats because it's what they would do. I would have to go back and like understand again, all the technical specifics of this, but they would have a Lightning invoice. They would have essentially a secret that if they pass that on to the person that's receiving, then the sats are sent. If they don't pass it on, then the sats are not sent and it can time out after 2 weeks or whatever time period. But they never, it's not just like, hey, here are the sats, like hold it for me.
Right. Got it. Yep. But then you still need to go back to the original proposer of the bounty to get them to sort of adjudicate that it was done or done within an 80%.
Not necessarily. Like the way this escrow service would work is the person that's sending the sats creates the secret, passes that on to the middleman, the escrow. This is it's been a year since I've really looked at this, but then they can choose the adjudicator whether or not they have all the information they need to make sure a payment goes through the other person. I see. They don't actually hold the sats. Yep. So it's decentralized in the sense that they can't just run away with the sats. That's impossible.
I see. So the escrow service is not, I guess if I understand right, the escrow service is not going to custody the sats.
No.
But they are going to be entrusted to make the decision. So they almost function as like a court system or a mediator.
Exactly. And so the way the Lightning Network works, like the person that, again, going off a year-old information, but the person that creates the payment. So let's say I agree. In this case, actually, it's a little trickier because the idea of this original escrow service is like who's going to get paid. So it's a little trickier here in that you don't know who's getting paid yet. But in that old world, let's say I say, DK, if you build me this site or you make this awesome video, I'm going to pay you 100,000 sats. I create basically the secret necessary to say DK gets paid this 100,000 sats to his node, his Lightning wallet. But I'm going to hand it to Steve or somebody else that holds that for us until they adjudicate that, yes, this was actually done. Right. But he can't run off with the money.
Yep.
But this is a little trickier now that I'm thinking through this live because you don't know who's getting paid yet.
Right. And I think there's another thing that touches on that, which is I think some of I don't know if it's one of the sites or the other, where you kind of apply to you kind of lock the bounty to you. Is that the typical way that bounties are thought to work? Or
I don't think it's so in this case. I mean, I think that's a good idea. It's an interesting experiment. I think in this case, you just trust the person.
I see. Because there's I think bounties are fascinating and it's, a new tool for, in a sense, like capital formation, let's call it. But then it also has these drawbacks in that either you're taking on the risk that the developer has, the person who wants to earn the bounty has to take on all the risk, and there's no way to sort of pool that risk with either other developers or capital partners. But I think this kind of escrow stuff starts to maybe extend it. At least it points to a way where capital formation could be extended beyond maybe a specific bounty getting locked to a person who then contributes to the project. And you can say maybe there's a whole community of people who expect to be beneficiaries of some work who could escrow that together,
pool resources,
and recognize that some centralized mediator gets to be the final decider, and there's some clear enough spec about what is hoped to be achieved. I guess
it starts to sound a lot about what a government could be.
Yeah. Where I was thinking of, I was thinking of venture capital as a current capital formation process that we have. So a little bit I mean, it has governmental, kind of democratic voting ideals that I think you're alluding to, but I was thinking of something even simpler, which is just, you know, um, you know, nearer, like I'd say bounty in sort of the current version we see is very near term.
Right.
It's like, okay, if you can build this feature next week and submit it, then you get the bounty. If not,
Totally.
no way. And it's hard to ever get to space, like build a rocket, build new telecommunications infrastructure for the planet. It's hard to do that in a bounty model because of the way kind of risk and timeframes work. I think venture capital is well suited to a lot of those types of like things that require more long-term and sharing risk and pooling risk across builders as well as capital partners. And then, sort of, I think of government as the very long-term, tax people, and then it's very diffuse beneficiaries, but you get to do basic science research. And sometimes those have, amazing results for humanity. So without any judgment on any of those models, I think they all work for certain cases. There's like tools that work for certain cases, and they have like, each one has its own substantial drawbacks. But I guess what I'm noticing is that maybe some of the venture capital pooling of risk and capital with financial partners actually can be done with a bounty paired with the escrow system like you're proposing, where you can take on maybe longer term projects that can be built out over time period and have adjudicators figure out, what is getting done and by whom, and, try to set up as much of a specific rubric around what you hope to achieve. But you don't have to have all the details figured out because you've got this adjudicator who, has sort of their own reputation to maintain over the course of, weeks and months and years, that any given project may not
Totally
have that same trust.
I love all that. And I think, who knows? I think there's gonna be a lot of experimentation around venture capital and a lot of other stuff. But even to my point, what I was talking about on like the sort of government ideas, like I forget the names of it now, but there's all these like kind of cool experiments that people have had for a long time around like prediction markets and other stuff around for government. And so one cool thing you could imagine doing here is like, you could, well, there's so many different experiments you could run, but you like take some money, escrow it somehow with, or maybe you do like have, Fedimint type style, like a group of elders that hold the tax resources for the community or whatever. And then, maybe it's still a representative system where you like say, okay, we're going to have this council that we vote on, or this one person or whatever, make the long-term decisions. And you could basically just like, elections are just, you could have like yes, no elections, like every couple of years. Like, is it like, do you think society is heading in a good direction or not? Like very simple stuff. And like, that's some of the way that you decide if the resources keep getting pulled by a guy or a girl. You could also do some interesting things where you do like, you pool a bunch of resources. This is like way out there sci-fi. It'll take some time, but you could also then just do, I forget the name of this. Is it Futarchy? I think the voting system, where you basically, you could have like prediction markets built in where you say, okay, we have this pool of resources. We have 25, again, probably better to do this representatives, but you could do direct democracy like in California or something where you say like, here are 25 different ballot initiatives. We have a total resources of 1 billion sats. Here are 25 different projects. We're going to have people predict and like bet with their own money which of these is going to most increase self-reported happiness or whatever within the society. And whichever one of those ends up winning out is how the sats get allocated. I'm not saying that's a good idea or a bad idea, but you can run a lot more experiments like that.
Yeah, I like experimentation in this vein. I think it's, the idea of how people organize is fascinating. And I don't think that, I don't think we have all the answers. I don't think the current way we have set up is the right way or the only way. I think there's new ways, but I think each new way comes with its own drawbacks.
Totally.
And I don't think there's like a, in a sense, I think we do have kind of the perfect money, but I think we have to be willing to compromise on the perfect other systems of human organization in order to make progress. I don't think, if we look for the purity of money, like what we've now seen as the purity of money, if we look for the same in all the other systems and how we govern and organize and, create for the future, I think we'll be a little slow to make progress. So
totally. But you could imagine here, right? Like that, I think if you only choose one thing, the perfect money and payment system are probably what you choose. But like you could imagine that like there is no right quote unquote global or governance answer. It just doesn't exist. Every community can run its own experiments. And maybe some people like the system we have now. Some people want to experiment with the Futarchy idea. And you can run all these different experiments. You could also have like opt-in systems where you say, I'm part of this community that cares about getting to space. And this starts to sound like the new form of a corporation, right? And so I want to pledge some sats and figure out who's our board of directors and like. again, all of the Web3 crap, like a lot of those ideas, like DAOs, they're interesting. I don't think
Right.
the voting model necessarily is interesting. Probably the
Right.
old school corporation is, but new forms of global, frictionless capital formation and deployment
Yep.
is going to be, I think that's going to be a wild trend this century.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, I think like most of the ideas that have been put forth probably happen in some flavor, but maybe just not in the paths that people, there's going to be plenty of dead ends in that exploration process. And maybe a lot of the ones that try to co-invent a new currency, don't end up getting out alive. But the core ideas that I think they're exploring often have some elements of merit that can be sort of reinvented and reattempted in different
100%,
forms. So
100%.
Cool. What else we got? I know we're kind of getting to the end of our time.
Well, I'll mention this one very briefly because it falls off of there.
Yeah.
There's a new Nostr blogging platform, which is called Habla. I think Habla.news or Habla.speak. I forget. It's cool. And there's a couple others.
You see who built it?
Who is it?
Verberica?
I don't know who that is.
He's the guy who was on our live session 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
On snort.social, yeah.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. I didn't even realize that. This
shout
is
out
the beauty
to
of Nostr. Yeah, shout out to Verberica. This one's interesting to me, and I know there have been a couple others, and I forget the names, but there's a few people that are experimenting with these. I will share just one of my own personal biases here, which is that I have used Twitter a lot over the last couple of years since getting into VC. And to be honest, I get some value out of it, but I also get like a lot of like anxiety, not just from like the algorithms and stuff. Like that's all true. And the bots and all the stuff people talk about, but also just like personally, I don't like scrolling. I hate infinite scroll of any kind. And so I noticed that my happiest days are when I like spend as little time like on an infinite scroll as possible. And so even with Nostr right now, I love it. And I think it's like infinitely better than Twitter is. There's no algorithms. It's a real conversation, but like, I still don't love the infinite scroll thing. So even though it's cool and I'm really excited about it, personally, I'm even more excited about some of the next wave that come after Twitter. I love finding one of my favorite things, throughout my whole life since youth has been trying to find like kind of genius weirdos on the internet who write beautiful long form pieces and like finding a truly novel insight. It's like, it's magical, right? And so that's one of the things I'm most excited about Nostr is as we start to go long form, like the Twitter, like, hey, I'm doing this in real time. Cool. But I'm much more interested in someone that's really put some thought in there. Maybe it's a pseudonym and they publish a genius idea or like, these kind of like under-discovered blogs. And so personally, that's one of the things I've been most excited about Nostr is I think a lot of those kinds of people are going to be posting on here because of their ethos, because identity, all kinds of different reasons. And so, and sure enough, on Habla, one of the first posts is from Melvin, who's one of the Nostr devs, also has a lot of experience with DID. He's like very smart guy, and he has a whole history of the web, and it's fantastic. And I recommend people read that.
Nice.
But yeah, just like I personally I feel so much better about myself
when
I spend my 20 minutes reading that article and like, okay, it's interesting, it's thoughtful instead of just like, oh, scroll zap.
Yep.
So
Makes
I'm
sense.
very excited about that.
Yeah, it's nice to have kind of the long form antidote to the short form kind of attention zapping, feed system.
Which is not to hate on that. I think it's cool, but just different.
We're obviously enthusiastic about both, but it's nice to be able to see the more long form stuff show up in this ecosystem. Because I think one of the benefits of having the long form stuff show up here is you also have connectivity to the short forms and to the feeds where you can easily take bits of that. You could highlight sections from that long form and push it back to feeds.
Exactly.
And it's all integrated with, you could have a whole commenting system get built up around long form. So you could almost turn like every blog post into a Google Docs.
Yeah.
And then you could filter the Google Doc commenting system by people that you follow or people who've, staked or sent sats on behalf of their idea.
Yeah.
Right. So just infinite experimentation around this area. I mean, I could not be more excited about like just the open surface area that's been uncovered now.
Yeah. And if anyone's out there finds like really great, Nostr blog posts or even more importantly, I'm excited to see, I love Nostr and Bitcoin, but like, I'm excited to see who's going to write like weird stuff about, archaeology. I've been on a bit of the Graham Hancock kick lately.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that,
I haven't seen his stuff.
His series is pretty interesting right now. Or history or music or whatever. Just like if there's, really great long form kind of oddball, interesting content. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So that's Habla. And then I think we were going to mention also
the proxies.
Yeah. You want to tell us
There's not a lot to say here, just that a couple of different people, Tony at Mutiny, and then another one called Nostr Proxy, and I think Dolu is his name. I think these are slightly different projects, but my high level understanding is you basically, instead of your client be connected to like 10, 15 relays, you connect to one relay, which is your proxy, and that relay can then publish and read on your behalf to other relays, which is nice for bandwidth usage. It doesn't slow the app down by being connected to so many relays. It's nice for privacy because you don't have to share your IP address. The downside is you can't really do paid relays that way, or at least I don't think it's a good way to do that yet, because you obviously have to share your pub key on that.
So this is a diagram of this is a Nostr proxy. So you're using a client like Hamster. You connect to Nostr Proxy. So you're writing all of your notes to your own proxy, and then it's republishing them out to a series of relays. And I think one of the benefits I've heard too is that it just if you want to try out a bunch of clients, you don't have to keep reintegrating all of your paid relays or your favorite relays. You just sort of have them all attached to the Nostr proxy.
Yeah, it's cool.
I didn't understand the cons. It says you can't use a public proxy if you're registered to paid relays. So why is that? Because aren't you still using the same npub?
Say that one more time.
So it says the cons. It says you can't use a public proxy if you are registered to paid relays. So if I'm registered to a paid relay, I think I just do the registration by coupling my npub with a payment.
With a payment.
And so if I'm using if I'm using a proxy, I'm still publishing with the same npub.
Well, I think the issue is, I'm not sure exactly how they do this, but you're not connecting to that proxy. You're not connecting to that paid relay directly.
Right.
So there's some issue there, but I don't know what that would be then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I figured like if it's signed by my private key and it travels with with that npub, effectively
maybe because, and I'm not sure exactly how the technical architecture of this works, but because in order to have something published to that paid relay, it needs to be signed by your private key, which I guess in theory it still is, even if it's going through a proxy. Yeah, actually, it's a good point. I don't get that.
Okay, I didn't know. Maybe
someone listening.
Somebody can enlighten us.
Yeah.
Cool. So that is the proxies, and what's the implication of this? I mentioned a few benefits. You mentioned a few benefits. Anything else?
I mean, a lot of it's around performance. Like we've talked, I think this is kind of the Tony one with, I think they called it Blaster News or something like that, but Blaster Proxy. I think it potentially is just more scalable for various apps and stuff as well. Like if we've talked about building the Cloudflare or something like this. I think in general, just having like layers between the clients and the relays make things much less resource intensive and generally also potentially cleaner if you want to do some cleaning there. And
right.
I don't know. I just think that, you're going to see like everything more kind of like stacks or layers.
Yep. Awesome.
I did want to just mention two fun things and then we can wrap with this project. The two fun things. One, there's now a Nostr hackathon. And so the people at Bolt.fun, Johns and Ed, they've done just an incredible job with that community. They did a lightning hackathon a couple of months ago that was killer. And a bunch of really cool projects like 10.10.1 came out of it, which is like a DLC project. Bunch of interesting stuff, Lightsats as well. And anyways, these guys, honestly, they're just like, it's really inspirational because they're not doing this for like money or anything. Like they're just like, they just love this stuff.
Yeah.
And I love them because not only are they incredible community organizers, but they actually originally came out of the Ethereum ecosystem and then came to Bitcoin. And because of that, I think they have like a lot more kind of like design focus. They're designers. They are developers as well. But all the apps that come out of their hackathons are not just like cool. They're actually like pretty and like nice to use.
Oh, nice.
And so I was just incredibly impressed with the quality of the projects that came out of their last hackathon. Now they're doing a Nostr-based hackathon. And I like they actually have two tracks. One's like a full app track and the other one's just design, which I like. So they're really focused on design. And they're merging that with the in-person Nostr hackathon in Nostrica, where we'll be. And I'm just really excited for that. And if you're a developer, they post about it on StackerNews. You can go to Bolt.fun or just go to StackerNews and find the thread. But I think they're going to have some prizes in there.
And so is it a fully in-person in Costa Rica thing, or
No, it's going to be both. And so the last time they did it over a couple of months, and they have incredible talks, from a lot of the Lightning community. I think both of us are probably going to be giving a talk somehow involved in this, potentially judging as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be online. I think it starts around March 10th, and then maybe like the final judging and like delivery of projects will be in person in Costa Rica.
So are we supposed to rearrange our flights to?
That's a great
accommodate
question.
that?
We should talk about
Okay,
that.
I don't know. I didn't get a full download yet on what we're supposed to.
I think these guys are doing it live.
Okay,
They're
okay.
good, but like very much like just LFG.
Right. Well, if we're expected to be in Costa Rica, I want to make sure that I'm in Costa Rica.
Yeah,
at the right
exactly.
time. I fly back and I'm like a remote participant. That might be less fun.
Cool. And then I just want to share one last little fun thing before we get to Keyan, which is the universal versus global feed. I'm sure you saw this in Damas.
No.
So this is interesting to me, partially because I was in New Mexico last week, as I mentioned, and New Mexico is famous for a lot of the alien stuff, UFO stuff. Of course, we had all the weird UFO stuff, which maybe it's a psyop, maybe it's not, whatever, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And New Mexico obviously is famous for Roswell, and a bunch of like people talk about aliens there a lot.
Yep.
You have the what's the national lab, Alamos, where the nuclear bomb was developed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and so someone just made the point. They were joking. I actually saw after I arrived last Sunday in New Mexico when the talk was happening about things being shot down, UFOs. Someone made a joke like, "Oh, we should call the global feed in Damas the universal feed because they're all out there."
I see.
And within a couple of days, this is what I love about Will and Damas and the ecosystem. He already shifted it, so now it's the universal feed, and there's a giant UFO next to it.
Okay, I did not get why that happened. I saw that happened. I've seen that little UFO up there, and I was like, "Huh, okay, interesting design choice." But now it all hangs together and makes sense.
This is what I love. Again, keep Nostr weird. As Jack Dorsey put on there, keep Nostr punk. Like, this is what I like. There's just people doing fun stuff because why not?
Yep. That's great. Cool. So universal versus global.
Yeah.
And then yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know if you want to talk about this other, so we can stay that for next time if you want.
Yeah, probably should wrap soon. Any last comments?
No, I mean, I guess we already mentioned this earlier, but just stoked to see Keyan shipping Booger.
Yep.
Excited to see what StackerNews ends up doing there. We obviously all think the world of Keyan, and excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we got a wrap for today. We'll do it live next week, maybe.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll just pop this one out and keep it rolling.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.